Welcome. So we are Gurreck Clan, which is your Washington chapter of the Mando Mercs Costuming Club. I assume you're all here because you're either interested about the club or interested in some armor. So we're very happy you came out to join us. So the Mando Mercs are a charity organization that helps spread awareness through the use of plastic space armor. It's pretty cool. We enjoy it quite a lot. My name is Yin. I am the Verilor, which is our event coordinator, second in charge. This here is Duralankist. He is our Alarad, our captain of our clan. Here is Ronan Tavik. He is our Rusalord, who is our costuming officer. And basically, if you want to get involved with us, joining our clan, making our armor, you'll talk to him a whole bunch. He's very knowledgeable.
And I won't shut up half the time, so
True.
Okay.
True.
Ask any question, and we're here for it.
We have a couple of our Gurreck members here. We have Racek Shosin in the blue and black, and we have Bragg Ola here in the gray and red. Is it black and gray? Gray and red? Yeah. We have Mavic here, who is going to be advising and helping us out. And we also have Anansi, who is going to be one of our smiths. Because, fun fact, one of you lucky people are going to get armor made live during this panel, and you're going to walk out with a full set of torso and shoulder armor. Does that sound pretty cool? What? Excellent. So, are we ready to get started with that? Do we need a couple minutes? I gotta go. All right, excellent. I need a volunteer who wants a set of armor. Let's see. Golly, not like anybody wants to do it. All right, let's go with you. I don't know your pronouns, I'm gonna go with sir. Want to get some armor? You'll probably have to take your jacket off. So, all good. We got time, it's a whole hour. No worries. Ron, is there anything you would like to share before we get started? Anything about the club, anything about your stand?
I don't think right yet. We'll figure it out as we go.
There we go. Okay. So, now, what is your name?
I'm Ethan.
Ethan. And so,
Hi, Ethan.
Hi, Ethan. So, how did you hear about the Mercs?
I saw the listing for this panel, and I'm a big Star Wars fan, and I love armor. So I don't have any myself, but I'm really excited for this.
Very cool. Excellent. Well, you're going to walk out of here with a diamond collar piece, 2 chest plates, ab plate, and 2 shoulder pieces, which is about half of what you need for a kit. So, up on our screen, you can peruse as we're talking. We're going to take some questions. But this is a basic schematic of what it means to be either a light build, a medium build, or a heavy build. And I'll stop standing in the light so we can actually see it. So I apologize if you're colorblind at all, but this is kind of the basics of what you need. Helmet, back plate, collar plate, diamond, chest pieces, ab plate, and 2 shoulders. So these will kind of get scrolled through as we're doing the panel. You can also, if you want to see these pictures later, you can message one of our socials and we'll just send the images to you. It's pretty cool. Yeah, and so what we're doing is most of light stuff. We're not providing a helmet today, but those are usually more of a personal item because there's so many styles and variances. But let's go ahead and what? Get started. Okay. If you have a question you'd like to ask about the Mercs, about building, about us, please raise your hand and we'll call you. And give some information.
I can chime in really quick just to kind of talk about what they're doing. So they're using, there's a lot of different materials you can use to build Mandalorian armor. One of the primary ones is what we call Sintra. So that's actually a brand name. It's a PVC board. But as you can see, they have a heat gun, which if you get a heat gun, please be careful. Everyone burns themselves on them, including me.
It'll happen at least once.
Yes.
Yes.
Not in the crux of the shoulder, of course. But anyway, so that's just thermal plastic that you can form. So it's great for this because with Mandalorian armor, there's not a lot of complex curves. So the one weak point that Sintra kind of has is it's great in one direction when you start trying to do like a compound curve, more like a bowl shape, anything like that. it will start to fold on you. So it's not necessarily the greatest use for that. There are ways around it. You can just, like if you're sewing something, you can put darts in it, smooth that over. There's ways to work it, and there's some very talented people in the group with that, but just kind of be aware if it's something you're interested in using that can be a complication with it. The great part is, it's been a while since I bought a sheet, but you can typically get like a 4x8 sheet. I know it used to be $40, it's probably a little more now.
3D printing is a newer thing. It's getting really, really popular, and it lends itself very well to a lot of the styles from the TV show on Disney Plus, The Mandalorian. And a lot of those styles are more complex. We got both of these examples here. We have era styles. They're called eras. It's not technically a timeline, more so a stylistic choice. And these are what we consider a post-imperial style, which is anything from The Mandalorian. Because saying the Mandalorian armor style, Mandalorian armor is just really, really wordy. Post-imperial sounds better. But these are more boxy, more compact, and those styles are really, really easy to get printed because they don't have to follow as closely to your body type. Both of them, our armor here, sorry about that, is modern style, and we have very different body types where if I had a file that fit me, it would not fit her. So different styles are going to lend themselves to being constructed in different ways, and there's no right or wrong way. Some are just better at different styles.
Then I'll just hit on, because one question I typically get when I do these panels is a lot of people, for cosplay use EVA foam, which is a great material. There's some very talented builders. For our club approval, it's not allowed for the armor to use that because mostly it's a durability thing. So I've been doing this since 2010. Some of my armor pieces have been going since 2010. And the issue we've ran into with a lot of the foam is it starts to crinkle, it starts to have issues.
It's
over time.
foam has a little upkeep the longer you have it. I've been doing it since 2012, and my chest armor was made from a sign that we found in our backyard under some shrubbery. I've had this chest plate itself for about 9.5 years now. And it's still, I've done very little upkeep other than repainting it and reattaching a couple snaps, and it's still going just as strong. And I'm not very careful in it. I'll run into things. I've done cartwheels in full kit before, and I like to dance a lot in it, so like your armor can be as mobile as you would like it to be, and it can be more of a reflection of yourself in that way too.
I believe you've even fought a bubble machine once.
A bubble machine?
Yeah, you're fighting the bubble.
I was fighting the bubble machines at the Oxbox game, it's true.
Yeah,
I won.
last year, I did a little video about 30-second clips and we just like ninja clapping, trying the bubbles out of the air. It's very entertaining.
So we can see they're starting out in the collar piece. That's normally a good base to kind of start with. So you base your alignment, because obviously when you're doing what we call again modern style or Boba or Django kind of style, a lot of the alignment is based off of that collar. A lot of times you want that sitting really high up, like to the point of I probably still have a mark on my throat from yesterday being in armor. Just so it ends up looking right. And so that will be mounted on a vest. So it's called an armor vest, right?
Flak vest, yeah.
Flak vest, armor vest. That's basically one of your most custom pieces of soft goods or soft parts that we typically have. There are makers, there are people who have patterns you can use online, there are people on our forums that they're better seamstresses than I am and can really knock out some high quality vests for the armor to be mounted on. Again, the material is really kind of up to you. It could be leather, it can be, duck cloth or like a canvas material is what a lot of people use. You want something sturdier. You don't want it.
You want to avoid things that have stretch for your flak vest specifically, especially if you have any plates that have spacing or gaps between them. Because once again, for over time, that stretch is just going to get worn out. Mine being leather, I've had the vest here now for probably 6-ish years. And when I moved out here from the East Coast, I had to redo my vest and I had to re-steam it because a lot of the poles and ties, the leather itself had stretched and deformed over time. So
yeah, and just in general for just kind of hit on the general costuming. So you may not think about, it's a piece of PVC foam, it's really lightweight, it doesn't seem like much, but if you're putting that on even just cotton or any spandex over a long period of time, that's gonna stretch. Now, if it's something more temporary you're doing for a day, that'll work, but that's kind of where our challenge comes in for a lot of this, is we're really trying to make these costumes work. So I was down in Southern California for a couple years, and there would be events every weekend that we could go to, and that's kind of a big part I really enjoy the Mercs for, is, you know, at the end of the day, the costumes aren't the cheapest things in the world when you're putting that money into it, and I probably go to 2 or 3 conventions a year, and for me the justification isn't there to just wear it at a convention and put that money into it, but through the charity work, through all the events we get to do throughout the year, that really is where it's worth it to me, because I'm in armor on average like once a month, I'd say. Probably a little less now, I just had a kid, but you know, before that.
For sure. If any of you haven't yet, I assume I've seen some of you in it, but the Star Wars Washington, as a collective, has a Star Wars experience over in the Summit Building on the 4th floor. And they are doing fundraising in that for Mary Bridge Children's Hospital. It's the same organization we raised money for last year. And after Emerald City, all the totals for everything between physical and digital donations, we had raised over $10,000 last year. And very cool. And I don't know what our total is right now, but I know after Thursday, we had nearly doubled what we made on Thursday of last year. So, ooh, good amount of money. We're very excited about it, because there's a lot of big hospitals in this area, but Mary Bridges kind of gets overlooked a little bit, just because Seattle Children's is so popular and well known. So we're excited that we get to help them in that way. Let's check in with our builders, how we doing.
Just costume general, is there any questions that you guys specifically have?
Yeah, let's talk. What's your question?
Is there a good way to get your head measurements so that you have a really nice custom fitted helmet?
Ooh.
I can answer that if you don't have that.
My short answer is no, so if you can
So the way that I've gone about measuring helmets for when I do 3D prints or looking at resin casts for myself to purchase, I go ear to ear. Usually there's a file online that's just cosplay calipers. That's what I use to print it out, and I just do it that way. Another way that I've done it is you can put your head on a bookshelf between 2 books and measure the distance there. The next one's a little tricky, but you can go between your nose and the occipital bone, kind of the apex of the roundness of the back of your head. And then general kind of rule of thumb is to add about 1.5 inches or so to that for how much space you want, so that you can have fans, padding, battery pack, microphone, any of that if you want any extra stuff in there.
Say the general sizing for our helmets is usually half the width of your shoulders, and so you can kind of, and that's with your armor on. So a lot of armor sits a lot closer to the body, but you can do more of a flared look. Some of the Clone Wars and animated style, the armor on the shoulders sticks almost straight out like wings. There's no real wrong armor. Some of the ones, the Death Watch style, are very large, and some people have them even upsized from how Raish has his. And so if you happen to be a smaller frame and you maybe find like a really nice like resin cast helmet, resin you can't really resize like you could print specifically for you. But if you find a nice helmet like that, having a little larger shoulders, or even like ARC Trooper and the Stormtroopers have the pauldrons that they wear over it. Things like that can give you that wider shoulder that makes your helmet still look fitted for you.
Yeah, something to keep in mind when you get a helmet, because that's always the first thing we advise you get, is just a helmet. So even if you go through the process of like you finish the helmet and you're like, I don't know if this whole costuming thing is for me, your life changes, you don't have time anymore, it still makes an incredible piece to display in your home, and you have pride in it because you worked so hard on it. I will say though, when you first get the helmet, you put it on, everyone has it, you look like a bobblehead. Trust us, by the time everything is on, it looks much more to scale. Over another question? Or?
Do it.
Yes. You, sir, in the black.
With the cape.
Yes, if we will hand the microphone to this individual.
So some time ago I got the Hasbro Boba Fett prototype helmet, and the problem I ran into was that the mechanisms that's supposed to hold the helmet to the head were too small, but the helmet itself was fairly big enough for me. So I was wondering if you guys had any recommendations for how to make the helmet secure to my head.
So there are a couple options you have for that. The padding on those helmets, I think it's got like some of that like the detailed like kind of like foam sort of printed pattern to it. That can all come out. And I move that up a little bit. Okay. That can all come out. Removing all of that padding, there is pretty much your options for how to pad your helmet are all over the place. You can get hard hat harnesses and glue those to the inside of it, and that gives you a lot of size adjustment for how it can sit. My helmet itself is like a $5 upholstery foam pad I bought at the craft store, and then just cut into chunks and glued on the inside.
Yeah, so for the helmet interiors, there's a wide range on everyone's that you'll see. So some people go fans, lights, just a lot of electronics. Some people like deck out the whole inside so it looks in universe, like it came right out of Star Wars. Similar to mine is basically I have some pads thrown in there so it holds onto my head and just hope for the best because no one's staying inside my helmet. But it's really up to you kind of what level you want to go to. That's one of the cooler things with the Mando. So I also do 501st costumes, and that's a lot of fun building that to the T. You know your requirements to make that costume that was right from the movie. But with the Mercs, there's a lot more leeway in our creativity to kind of keep it in Star Wars, but you're looking at stuff around your house and seeing kind of like they used to build costumes, in the 70s originally when Star Wars came out. It was less of the 3D printing, which is still very prevalent, very popular, but ours allows you to kind of go to the hardware store and see what they have and what else could this little piece of plumbing be or whatever.
Yeah, the Star Wars term for it is greeblies or greebling. It's basically just finding random bits and bobs that look sort of Star Warsy. Both of my gauntlets are not 3D printed. They were both made from scratch. And the little gun bits I have on the top here are PVC pipe, some pipe fittings, and zip ties.
Right. Also worth noting is that motorcycle helmet padding, you can buy packets of them and they come in like individual, like smaller 2x4, 2x3 inch pads that you can place periodically you need. Duro, who's one of our smiths, he has ones on his cheeks to make it so his helmet doesn't rock back and forth and hit him in the nose. So pretty good. Let's take it. Is there a question over here? Anyone over here have a question? Okay, anybody else have a question? Oh, you do? Listen, that's the beautiful part about the Mercs is that we tote that we have the most customability and the most ability to express yourself that any of the clubs have to an extent because you can do whatever you want. I mean, for myself, owning
But don't go crazy.
What?
But don't go. You can do what you want, but don't go crazy.
But don't go crazy. Yes. So I don't look like any of the characters on the show, but I am an approved member. Like my gauntlets, the way my plates are shaped, it was entirely came out of my own brain of how I wanted my kit to look. I mean, I gave myself a nice little finger claws. I've never seen that before, but I wanted it. So there's tons of customization. You don't just have to do the boba plates. You don't have to just do the Din Djarin the chest or their helmets. My helmet on display up there comes from Albatross Customs on Etsy. It's their own design called the Vanguard, I think. And it looks cool. So you don't have to be just a cookie cutter copy of Boba or Jango or Din or Bo-Katan and just recolor it. You put your heart and soul into looking whatever way you want to look.
Yeah, so for our club, so it's the crossover versus customization, right, or the inspiration. A lot of people ask kind of where that is. So we have, it gets very subjective, but basically it's 80-20 is kind of the split for crossover stuff. So for club approval, you can't have a straight up Captain America, Mandalorian star instead of chest time, kind of thing like that. So again, awesome costumes, definitely for conventions or whatever. Just if we're talking club specific, you can't do that. But you can use Captain America as inspiration for your costume. So
I know there's a member up in Canada, and their kit is Captain Marvel inspired. So it's very red with yellow and blue. It is an approved kit. It is not Captain Marvel specific, but you can tell where the inspiration came from with it.
Yeah, and so like for mine specifically, it was I had a chocolate husky mix growing up. So it's a brown kit with blue, that Jag eyes from the Clone Wars. It's basically based off of that. So you can really find those inspirations kind of from anywhere and what you're interested in. Again, it's just kind of playing with that fine line of Star Wars universe versus when you start getting into like the true hard crossover characters. So.
Mm-hmm. Do we have another question? Let's go. I'm gonna come over here to you with the red. I'm gonna run. Just give me a second.
Into the wee hours tonight a couple days ago, and I want to know how you do the visor on there because I burned the crap out of myself. Get a hot blue.
So I also burn the crap out of myself.
Men. So, my visor is held in with something called visor clips. I just found them off Etsy. They're 3D printed little bits that you just super glue onto the inside of your kit, and everything slides in, and there's a locking mechanism to make sure it doesn't come out of place. But I was also like, I might want to change this color. This has to come out.
Yeah, so I've used, so I had a Return of the Jedi Boba Fett that used bolts with washers that were, basically the washers would hold it down. That's one method. Honestly, my favorite method though is hot glue. It burns you, but the thing is, if your visor cracks, you ever want to just take it out and switch it, hot glue's kind of your great. It will hold for 90% of everything, and as long as you don't leave it in the hot car on a summer's day, it's gonna keep holding, and then when it's time to change it out, rip it out, you can take it out without destroying the helmet. So that's kind of what I've learned from a lot of just like, again, the long term having the costume is having that ability to remove things without destroying them to get them apart. So that's kind of where I like, if I can bolt it on or if it can be put on in a semi-permanent way that you don't have to absolutely tear it apart. Like if you just slather something in super glue, the odds are when you get it off, it's not going to be in great shape. So that's where I really like hot glue for the visor specifically.
So yeah, the secret word is carefully. Hot glue works, you just gotta use it carefully.
Oh, right here. It's like a question.
How hard is it to see in your helmets?
It largely depends on your visor style. There are ways to add more visibility for you. You are going to have limited visibility. That's just, there's no way around it. But the visors themselves really aren't much darker than wearing like sunglasses. Yeah. And you can have some that are darker and some that are a little lighter. The reflective visors, you can usually get a little lighter and a little easier to see through than going for just like a straight like black visor, or one of the welding shields is a really common one we use. But having either angles more to the front of the helmet or even just something very subtle, it doesn't have to be very large, but just a little bit extra space right where your eyes are, that alone can add a lot of visibility to you.
And compared to a lot of helmets, the T-visor is actually great because that visor going all the way down to the bottom lets you kind of peer down at it and see.
You can see where your feet are going.
Yeah, unlike a lot of other helmets. So it's actually, in the grand scheme of Star Wars helmets, probably one of the better ones.
Yeah, you have a lot of really great front view. Like you can see in front of you, really great peripheral, not so much. It depends. There are some that, like the enemy assassin style, have these little cuts down the side that give a little bit more peripheral, but for the most part, your vision's about this, like just center and right about through here. Do we have another question? Oh, I'm gonna go right here because it's convenient. Oh, we have all the questions.
What do you use to cut the armor pieces down to the right size?
So the most common tool is generally a rotary cutter or a Dremel tool. A box cutter is another option for it. Depending on the thickness of your Sintra, you can do multiple cuts to it, and that comes through pretty easily. This is a 4mm Sintra. Commonly it comes in either 3 or 6. That's just what most sign shops carry. Yeah, 4 is a new thing. There's some ceiling tiles that Lowe's has started carrying. That's essentially the same product, just again slightly different brand name to it, and cheaper. That's always a bonus because the costume, you're putting a lot of effort and a lot of work into it. It is going to cost money. There's just no way around that. But it doesn't have to be. There are Boba Fett costumes that cost upwards of $3,000 to $5,000. And especially with a custom, it doesn't have to be that way. We have members that have made fully approved kits in under $200-300, and you have something that you look like you just walked off the set with it.
So any other questions?
Hi, I was wondering if y'all had any tips on weathering, how to make it look authentic, if it's like doing it authentically or painting it on is a better strategy. Go hiking is a strategy, I heard. What do y'all do?
Was that weathering?
Yes. So there's honestly, sky's the limit. I had a friend who was weathering her kit who came over and took her flight suit and rubbed it in the tire well of our car, or in the exhaust of our little 91 Honda. There, I did all of my weathering with old eyeshadow and washed out acrylic, or watered down acrylic rather. There's a lot of resources for doing that.
The two main styles of adding, especially chipping and battle damage to the armor, the two methods are subtractive and additive. With subtractive methods, you are basically painting the armor, and then as you go, you're masking off where you want your damage to show through. That's how my armor was painted. So my process was I had primed and smoothed everything, got it all gray and ready. And then I did my metallic coat, which for my armor, I went with a gold for the metal. A lot of people do silver, super common. There's a dozen shades of silver that you can use. There is no wrong or right one. Basically anything that looks like a metallic is a great metal coat for your armor. So I'd start with that one, got the whole thing painted that one color. And then I used just liquid latex masking fluid and just applied it very carefully with a toothpick. And basically just made those areas where I wanted it to sit, and then you would do your next coat. And depending on how much detail and how much layering you want, you can have undercoats of a separate color. Like Yin has her red showing through on parts where she's got her weathering.
Yeah, so that, if you look at Boba's armor, that really comes from that, and it's kind of considered the primer coat coming through.
I say, much like Sabine in the series, she repainted her armor so many times. And a lot of the armor you can tell from the Mandalorian looks like it's either scavenged from somebody or maybe given down through a family line. So you can sort of tell a story with that by having other layers underneath. And you essentially just build up and you keep masking off in that one specific area. Sometimes you add little dots over here, a little bit over here, and then you basically build it up that way. And that is the subtractive method. Additive is you will paint the whole thing, whatever your top coat is. So for mine, I have a white gray as my primary color. And you would do everything in that one color, and then you would go back with either a brush or with masking tape and mask off where you wanted, or back again with the fluid, you would mask off where you wanted to add in little spots of it. Dry brushing is very common. It's the same thing used for a lot of models. Where you'll take a paint, take a brush, get most of it off, and then you're just hitting high points and corners to make it look like it's old and worn.
Yeah, and then a big part of Star Wars is kind of the used universe look, right?
Grime.
So that's where you'll be amazed at, you'll do your silver coats, your primary paint, you'll take it off, you're probably still not going to be all that happy with it, and you're like, well, it just doesn't feel right, something's
missing
not right
something.
yet. And then as soon as you use the black washes and brown washes, stuff like that, that's when it really grinds it up, brings it kind of that dirty look, that used look, and again, for Star Wars, that's more what we're typically looking for.
It's also a perfect opportunity to add tiny little details. If you get a chance to look at Raish's kit here, he has little spots of moss in some of his, because his is a aquatic themed. And that is, you can't really see it from afar, but if you get close up on it, those details just pop out and it adds an entire new level of detail to the kit.
And then Kevin had brought up the liquid latex for the masking. That's definitely my favorite to use for it. However, there's plenty of people who use toothpaste or mustard. It's really just something that will stay. So
he did it.
There you go.
Your plates will smell like mustard for a while if you use it. Fair warning. I've done it. It works in a pinch.
And if you have white plates, you're gonna have yellow.
It's gonna have a little tint to it.
No one's complained about your plates smelling like toothpaste before on this one. No one complained about that.
So I was hoping, so you guys there that are doing the actual molding, can you talk a little bit about that process and how you're doing that?
Foamsmiths, our armor smiths, what's our process like?
So the process that we're doing right now, I don't know if you've had a chance to really see, but we've basically been working in full segments. So when we were doing the collar plate, we worked one side, then the other, then kind of worked down through the center, and then went back to tweaking the corners as needed. It's better to heat in small sections and work closer to what you need. Sure, for some of these larger curves, you can heat the whole plate and just slap it on there and let it go. But it's also, you want to start then working your corners, kind of finessing it in, kind of similar to like how you do woodworking and stuff like that. Go big first, then dial it in as you get closer and closer to what your true shape is going to be.
Saying a pro tip as you're shaping, especially with Sintra, is if you give it a little pull as you're molding it onto you, it can help work out some of the wrinkles, help give it more of a natural curve that follows how your body's going to sit.
Mm-hmm. And if you get divots while you're heating up, happens to all of us, just hit that area a little bit, don't usually pop right back out.
We had a question over here, someone asked about what type of paint. There is no wrong answer for what type of paint. Primarily we use a lot of spray paints, and again, it's a longevity thing. Acrylic paint we use primarily for our washes in the dirt, because if you lose a little bit of dirt, no one really notices. But for adding a lot of the nice finish to it, it's really easy to get with just normal rattle can spray paint. Some people will use you use airbrush for yours, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. I use thin down acrylic, kind of the same stuff that you just find at like Michael's or Joann's, whatever that sort of stuff is. Just thin it down to be almost a milk-like consistency and shoot it through an airbrush. I just like to have control. I know Yin over here also liked it so that she could do all of her gradients. That came out really nice.
Mm-hmm. So our metallics were done with rattle cans, just because metallics out of rattle cans typically do look a little bit better, because they're designed to look really sparkly and nice and professional. And then I did want gradients, and I was like, I'm not doing rattle can gradient. That sounds like a headache waiting to happen. So we got an airbrush, and I just found the colors I wanted, like a Joann's or a craft store or something, and sprayed them on.
The biggest thing is you want a nice clean application to it. So I have seen people do details and top with like paintbrushes. It is very difficult to remove lines when you're doing paintbrushing, and you want to have that nice smooth finish. And either an airbrush or spray paint is one of the best and easiest ways to get that.
And then with spray paint, if you haven't used it a lot, so it's generally recommended to stick within the same brand, but even that is not 100% guaranteed. I've mixed them, so you'll get what's called orange peeling, right? And basically you'll spray your next layer and then it'll start crinkling up because the paint will just be reacting with the layer underneath. So again, same brand normally helps mitigate that. It's not a guarantee. And then even then, I've mixed brands before because it was just the colors I found that I wanted and needed, and I've been totally fine. So it's kind of a crapshoot when it comes to the spray paint.
Some of them are just finicky.
Yeah, it's very finicky. Make sure to read the back of the can because there are temperature requirements for it when you're spraying, and following those will help you a great deal, making sure it's fully dry and set. Because when it comes to painting, we all get impatient and want to rip off the tape and go to the next layer, but you might regret it.
So Rasic has color shift paint on his kit, which I adore, part of the bioluminescence thermal blending for inspo. How was it applying the color shift?
Yeah, what I had to do, it's a little bit of a special application. So my base is the name of it is Camouflage Black. And then I used different colors of reds and greens and blues of the color shift. You can find them at auto stores. It's hard to see here, but in the sunlight, it color shifts. It'll move from blue to greens and reds.
So those came in aerosol?
And they were paint cans, yes.
Okay, cool. I was curious because you see the little ones from like the red apple or the folk arts where they got the color shift, and I was like, did you put that through an airbrush? I don't know.
You can.
You can. All right.
Enthusiasm.
When it comes to costuming, I find that the lower half of my body is something I struggle with. Make me both functional, comfortable, as well as looking good. What do you recommend, especially for someone not of a standard size?
If I'm not standard size, I'll take that. Find stuff with stretch in it. So a lot of the flight suits will recommend you can buy a jumpsuit like a Dickies or something like that. I fully endorse doing a two-piece of scrubs. The rule of thumb is that you have to make it look like it's one piece altogether, but I found that the first pair of scrubs I bought had no stretch in it. And I tailored them, and I sat down and I was like, this hurts my body, my insides, they complain. So I then rebought same color, same brand, but one that had like 10% spandex or some other stretching fabric in it, so it has a little bit of give. You'll find that when you have an unusual size, as you've probably found, they don't manufacture stuff that fits you really well, so a lot of it is custom making it to yourself. Like, I had to make my own belt because they don't make belts this big. And my waist item has elastic lacing on the sides so that it fluctuates as my weight fluctuates. So you have to kind of find things that work for you, but stretch is good. Stretch is so good.
And even if you find like like mine is a flight suit. I got it from a surplus store because it was cheap, and that is an option you can use.
I think you unplugged yourself.
Did I unplug myself?
An option you can use.
Oh,
Just in your peak before you cut
There's a mute button?
Yeah.
Where'd it go?
It's probably right in the center. Push.
Find a flight suit that you like, and if you happen to have some knowledge in sewing, you can add panels to the side for using a stretch fabric, and that can give you more of a size variance as you move, as your body changes, because we wear these costumes a lot, and you want your costume to be comfortable over time. It will not be the most comfortable thing, but there are ways to make it more comfortable for you.
If you're in a flight suit, how do you go to the bathroom?
Mine has a double zipper for emergencies. A lot of it, honestly, when you're wearing it, you sweat a lot out because you do want to stay hydrated because you're wearing multiple layers of leather and plastic and thick fabrics. They don't always breathe. Some people use real metal for their armor as well. All of that insulates and keep things in. So you're going to be drinking constantly.
The two-piece flight suit is a large help for that. So it's still going to be a pain because I think on average you're wearing about 3 belts with various things attached to them. So it's not easy, but it is doable. A two-piece flight suit is generally double zipper if that works for you, or 2-piece is kind of the best way to go. Although I just suffer through the day a lot of times.
So my answer is that I go into the big bathroom and I take all of my armor off. So it's usually go before, and then you will be sweating too much to worry about it most of the time. Let's go. You have had your hand up for a while. Let's ask you a question. Could someone hand this to her?
So I noticed with this demonstration, a lot of the molding is direct for the chest piece specifically is directly against the model's body. What would you recommend doing if you're looking for a shape that's different than your body type?
So if you are using Sintra and you are modeling to a shape that is not specifically to you, the best way is to find something or make something. Wood is a great option for it that you can almost use as like a molding point. When I'm doing a lot of my molding, if I'm trying to get like a really crisp, clean, hard line, either heating the Sintra and bending it over like a metal ruler is a great way to get like a nice like 90-degree angle, or even just like a corner somewhere where I want it. So using some sort of shape that you can have it. If you have, maybe you want extra padding somewhere or you want to build it up. The main thing is that you want the armors to still fit you on the side. You want it to look like it's fitted around you. So you can either emphasize, or if you want to do some presenting of an armor that, maybe you appear more male but you want to appear more female, or vice versa, you can do that with the armor.
Additionally, use of darts. The Sintra works very similarly in a lot of techniques to EVA foam. So if you would put a dart somewhere in EVA foam, you can put a dart in Sintra. You're just likely going to have to fill it with something like Bondo or a 2-part epoxy sculpt or something else to fill in the gap, because there would be one. But that's how you can get more of the dynamic shapes or things that are more suitable to untraditionally male bodies. You get a question.
I'm curious about the shoes. Like, those shoes are like painted?
My shoes are painted. So shoes are really, really open for custom Mandos. There is no real right or wrong one. Our general default is some type of boot. You want something that does not have a large, pronounced heel. Just because we're matching a lot of visual references from Star Wars, we want to go with what we've seen. So those are the common ones that we use. Star Wars doesn't believe in laces on their shoes, and they want the zippers to be hidden, because zippers don't exist in Star Wars except for the times that they do, but we don't talk about those.
If there's one thing I recommend you spend money on, it's good footwear. Invest in good footwear, because You're like, oh, I'll break these in, I'll stretch them in. No, you won't. You will get in kit and you'll be in half an hour in and you'll want to die and rip your feet off like me.
Can't feel your toes.
I can't feel my toes.
And the zipper thing actually brings up a really interesting point. Like, if you're looking at building a custom Star Wars costume, you say, well, how it's custom, so I'm not taking it from the movie, but how do I do that? Well, there's actually a lot of interviews with like the people who were making the costumes back then. Like George Lucas didn't want to see closures, so like snaps, zippers, all that stuff he didn't want to see. Now, again, in subsequent movies, that definitely changed over time, and there are zippers there. That stuff is there, but it's still kind of done minimally.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, as you're making that custom Star Wars costume, hopefully Mando costume, but whatever it may be, just really look at the reference material and you'll kind of get the idea of like modern day stuff. It's top stitching everywhere on every soft part. So that's kind of like a lot of the new, like Mando's flight suit in Din Djarin. He has so much stitching on the flight suit that those weren't necessarily, there's a bit of that on Boba Fett, not really on Jango Fett.
Not nearly the same.
But
same degree.
again, like even the Star Wars style has kind of changed over time, so you can kind of play with that too. Which is interesting.
And yeah, she mentioned painting specifically. So my boots, you probably can't see quite yet. They are a black leather tanker boot. It's a style that I really liked and I looked for a while. I had some brown ones at one point, and I wore those boots for 11 years, and finally found a replacement pair. But my kit does not have a whole lot of black on it, and so I didn't want to go with that color. There is a company called Angelus Leather Paints, and they make leather paints. How about that? And they are fantastic for adding a different color to them. Bragg's boots are also painted. Used the Angelus as well, right? What color were they originally?
Chocolate brown.
They were brown. They are now green and dirty. Very, very dirty. And we even see examples of painted leather from the Solo movie. His vest that he wears has almost like a black and white, like crackle, old paint to it. So there's examples in universe, and that's one of the best ways if you're doing something maybe a little, you haven't seen it as much before. We have a lot of flexibility in our rules where if you can find it in canon where it's used in an old comic, an old series, an old screenshot somewhere from a video game, there's a lot of flexibility to some of the rules where I haven't seen anybody on The Mandalorian wearing painted specific gray boots. But we see examples of similar things, so it's workable.
Yes. We have a direct hand over there. I'll hit you next. I'm gonna go over here because she was so quick on me. Enthusiasm.
You gotta be quick on the draw.
Listen, I got ADC. You go first. Thank you.
Were there a lot of bounty hunter costumes that you guys knew of before the Mandalorian show came out? I can only think of Boba Fett. I'm sure there's more, but.
So before the Mandalorian show came out, we had Boba and Jango were our two staples, and both of those characters have had various costumes throughout the years. In other forms of media, either mentioned in books, it's been shown in video games, or it has been in comics. And comics was a large part of where we got a lot of our inspiration, and a lot of the Mandalorian lore was fleshed out. And in those comics and in some of those novels, they would explain how some of the pieces went together, or how they looked like, or how at one point I think there was a Han Solo book where he mentioned that if the Mandalorians could agree on what color they needed to be, they could probably take over the galaxy. So from that, we're like, oh, well, obviously there's a lot of colors to Mandalorians, and they don't all have to look the same silver or gray or blue or green.
So predominantly our club focuses on the canon Mandalorians or custom Mandalorians. So while Boba is a bounty hunter, we don't really have CRLs for other bounty hunters, like a Bosk or a Fennec Shand or something like that. Those usually fall into one of the other clubs, like the 501st or something of that nature. They usually have guidelines for those sort of things. The Mando Mercs, as the name implies, focus specifically on the Mandalorians.
But a touch to that as well, your Mandalorian also does not need to be human. As we saw in the series, Mandalorian is a creed. And that is even something that's carried on. They've changed the lore as the years progressed, as the show came out, but that is something that has remained constant throughout the Mandalorian history, is that anyone from any planet and any place could be a Mandalorian. In our club, not locally, but in our club worldwide, we have Wookiee Mandalorians, Jawa Mandalorians. I don't think we have an Ewok yet, but we do have an Ewok now.
We do have an Ewok.
Texas has an Ewok Mandalorian. There's Nautilins, Twi'leks, pretty much anything that you can think. If there is a Star Wars race, someone has made a Mandalorian of it. Or they should, and that could be you.
All right, you got a question?
I think you already kind of answered with your last couple questions, but you had mentioned early on the idea of approved armor. Is that, my big question is like, is that an objective or a subjective test? And is it decided by the local chapter type thing? I can imagine you put so much time into it, it'd be pretty traumatic if you show up and you're super excited and nobody else is excited for it.
Absolutely. So approval is a term that we throw around a lot. Our club is a worldwide club. We are Lucasfilm affiliated. We are recognized by them. We will go to events where they will ask us to be there for either sporting events or movie premieres and things like that. Because of that, we want to have basically a dress code for it. And much like the 501st wants all of their costumes to look exactly as they appeared. If you're a stormtrooper from this, Empire Strikes Back has a different stormtrooper than Return of the Jedi. So there's various differences that they want their characters to look like. Much in the same way, the Mando Mercs, we have our CRLs, our costume requirement list. And a lot of those requirements are a little vague, and they are vague on purpose because we want to allow the customizability to it. And so there is a global approval team, and there is local members, local officers that assist you in understanding the CRLs. That's my specific job, as the Rousselor Salish. We use our fancy Mandalorian words, but that basically means that I am the armor interpreter of our guidelines. So as you're building, or as you have something built, if you are wanting to go for approval and you're like, hey, I read through the CRLs and it says that, this thing can be either A or B, what does that mean? That's when you come to me and I can help you understand it through there. As you get your kit pretty much to finished, we do a local pre-approval where you'll take your fancy standing still, not moving, basically like promo shots to see all the angles of your costume. And generally we check off the major things, like we want to make sure you don't have any zippers that are exposed. We want to make sure you don't have any tags sticking out of like maybe your neck seal or your jacket or your vest. Maybe you don't want anything like that. Once all of those buttons have been hit, the costume will be sent through to our global approval team. And then they will similarly check all of those items off. And approval is an option. Obviously, we are here because we are members of the club. We love the club, and we want more people to join. But it's a choice. Some people really love their crossover Mandalorians. Some people there's a lot of things I've seen where people enjoy them, and that brings them joy, and that's the kit that they want to make. And it doesn't necessarily fall into our CRLs. Mm-hmm. And I never want anybody to feel like their costume is less because they aren't approved. Approval it's literally it's a dress code for joining a club. It doesn't mean that someone who hasn't put as much skill or effort into their costume. It just means that we've checked some boxes over here. Because a prime example, Mavic mentioned foam earlier. I have seen some amazing foam smiths do absolute magic. I've tried to use foam, it doesn't look that good. I don't know what deal they made with what devil, but I'd like to get in on it. A large part of why foam isn't approved is because not everybody has those skill sets. And Sintra is very, very similar, and you can get the same and better results much easier with much less effort, and it saves a lot of heartache that way.
Okay. Real quick, can someone tell me the time?
11:51.
Oh, excellent. We will probably have time for one more question before we check in. This person shot their hand up immediately, so we're going to do that real quick. But yes, we want to emphasize that we love people's costumes and their creativity. It's just we have certain guidelines we have to meet to stay affiliated and access to really cool stuff so we can continue spreading the word and raising money for charity. Oh, look at that! This guy's in a Mando armor, let's go! Perfect. All right, so you're going to be our last question, and then maybe we'll have another one if it's short, but.
And we will also be at the Star Wars Experience at room 420 in the Summit Building later today. So if you do have more questions, you're more than happy to come and talk to us, and we'll be more than happy to answer them all.
I know I'll stick around after too. I'm sure some of us will if there's questions after outside.
Yeah. Until they kick us out.
This is a little bit twofold, but I kind of had some questions about hygiene when it comes to your soft parts, partially like how do you manage it when in costume, and how do you, clean it afterwards if you have bits attached to it?
So the goal is that your flight suit itself should have very little attached to it, aside from like Velcro or magnets or snaps, whatever your attachment points are. Some people can put theirs through the wash normally, like they do. Some of us cannot, because I have weathered my kit with acrylic. I can't put that in the washing machine because that's water soluble. So what I do is an old theater trick for what they do for costumes. You take pure vodka and spray bottle and go all over that. You soak that thing in vodka.
I just go for the store-bought, the Lysol disinfecting spray, not the deodorizing. There is a difference, but the disinfecting spray is a great way, especially in between events, or if you're out and you're if you're traveling to another state for a convention and wearing it out somewhere else, you don't have access to a washing machine. But yeah, anytime you can make your plates removable, so you can just have fabric, if you can rewash it, that's great. And then heavily apply your deodorant the day of the convention.
Yes.
And so it also, again, because these are kind of costumes that'll be in storage on and off, so you want to make sure there's not moisture where it's being stored, because I have seen people's costumes just ruined because they go to open their kit up and maybe they were sweating in it really bad, maybe it was just wet out and it molded and destroyed the costume. So you want to be careful of that. Also, if, I know we're in Washington, but if you have a nice sunny day right after you're done wearing it, you can throw it out in the backyard and let it soak in the sun for a little bit.
Don't put your plates out there though. That's how you deform things. All right, so I think that's about all we have time for. Just gonna check in. Ethan, you feeling good about your armor?
I feel amazing.
Yeah.
You look amazing.
As well as the armor, you are also getting a pistol, a West Star from the clan to help you along your journey. So, as part of the Mando Mercs, we have a little war cry we do for when we have special events and excitement. It's Oya. So on 3, if everyone would give me a nice loud screaming Oya so we can wrap up this panel, I would greatly appreciate it. Sound good? 1, 2, 3. Oya! Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your Emerald City.